Ah, the Galactic Federation University, where species from across the cosmos come to learn, grow, and occasionally question their life choices. Today's special, a lovely batch of fresh meat, new students for the infamous Survival Skills 101 class. Let's see how our dear alien friends handle this unique learning experience, shall we? Professor Zixnax slithered into the classroom, his gelatinous form pulsating with what could only be described as a mix of excitement and schadenfreude. The array of students before him was a veritable rainbow of alien life forms, each more bewildered than the last. Welcome, dear students, to Survival Skills 101. Zixnax's voice reverberated through the room, a sound somewhere between a purr and a gurgle. I hope you're all ready for an enlightening semester of character building. A tentative appendage rose from the back of the room. Excuse me, Professor, chirped a timid voice belonging to Blorp, a blobby creature from the cushy paradise world of Floferia. I thought this was intergalactic cuisine appreciation. Did I enter the wrong classroom? Zixnax's gelatinous form rippled with barely contained laughter. Oh no, my dear Blorp, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. It's just that on some planets, survival is cuisine appreciation. Isn't learning fun? The collective gulp from the class was audible. Now then, Zixnax continued, his tone dripping with false sweetness. Let's start with a little roll call, shall we? When I call your name, please state your species and home planet. As Zixnax began calling out names, the diversity of the class became apparent. There was Gizelop from the low-gravity world of Featherlight, looking like a cross between a dandelion and a jellyfish. Grex Thor from the aquatic planet Bublonia, desperately trying to keep his gills moist in the dry classroom air. And of course there was. What do we have here? Zixnax's voice took on a curious tone. It seems we have a human in our midst. How delightful. Please introduce yourself to the class. All eyes and various sensory organs turned to a figure sitting in the corner. Unlike the other students who were either floating, oozing, or defying the laws of physics just by existing, this one looked oddly normal. 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head with a mop of unruly hair. The human stood up, a lopsided grin plastered across their face. Hey there. I'm Alex from Earth. You know, that little blue marble in the unfashionable western spiral arm of the galaxy. Yeah, that's home sweet home. A confused murmur rippled through the class. Earth. That name rang a bell. But surely it couldn't be. Zixnax's gelatinous form quivered with what could only be described as glee. Earth? Oh my. Class, it seems we have a celebrity among us. Can anyone tell me what's special about Earth? The silence fell over the room, broken only by the soft squelching of nervous alien appendages. No one? Well then, allow me to enlighten you. Earth, my dear students, is classified as a death world. The reaction was immediate. Gasps, shrieks, and one unfortunate case of spontaneous molting filled the air. Blorp, the poor soul, began to dissolve into a puddle of anxiety. Alex, meanwhile, looked utterly nonplussed. Death world. Simon, that's a bit dramatic, isn't it? Sure, we've got a few natural disasters here and there. And okay, maybe our wildlife is a tad aggressive, but... A tad aggressive? Zixnax interrupted, his voice a mix of amusement and disbelief. My dear Alex, your planet's dominant life forms evolved from pursuit predators. You have creatures that can inject venom through their teeth. Your planet regularly tries to shake you off with tectonic movements. Alex shrugged. Tuesday? The class stared at the human in a mixture of awe and horror. Ixilop's delicate fronds began to wilt under the mere thought of such conditions. Well then, Zixnax continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm, since we have such an experienced individual among us, perhaps Alex would like to assist with today's lesson. Alex's grin widened. Sure thing, Prof. What do you got in mind? Zixnax's gelatinous form rippled with what could only be described as malicious glee. Oh, nothing too strenuous. We'll start with a little practical exercise I like to call survive or become someone else's lunch. With a dramatic flourish, quite impressive for a being without arms, Zixnax activated a holographic projector. The classroom shimmered and transformed into a dense, alien jungle. The air became thick with humidity, and strange, unsettling noises echoed from the holographic foliage. Welcome, class, to the delightful ecosystem of Planet Nope. A charming little death trap in the Yikes 9 system, Zixnax announced, his voice barely containing his amusement. Your task is simple. Survive for the next hour without becoming a snack for the local wildlife. Oh, and do try to keep all your limbs attached. The medical bay gets so cranky about reattachment procedures. The class erupted into a cacophony of terrified squeaks, squawks, and in Blorp's case, a sound not unlike a deflating balloon. But Professor, Grex Thor gurgled through his rapidly drying gills. We haven't had any training. How are we supposed to survive in this death trap? Zaxnax's form rippled in what might have been a shrug. Why, that's the beauty of it, my dear student. There's no better teacher than imminent peril. Besides, you have an expert among you. He turned to Alex, who was already eyeing his surroundings with an unsettling mix of caution and excitement. Any words of wisdom for your classmates, our resident Deathworlder? Alex cracked their knuckles, a sound that made several of the more gelatinous students quiver. All right, folks, listen up. First rule of survival, don't panic. Second rule, everything is trying to kill you until proven otherwise. Third rule, if it moves, it's probably dangerous. If it doesn't move, it's definitely dangerous. Oh, how reassuring, Seelup whispered, his delicate fronds curling in on themselves. Now then, Zixnax announced, already beginning to fade from view. I'll be observing from a safe distance. Remember, children, if you're not the predator, you're the prey. Enjoy. And with that, the professor vanished, leaving the terrified students alone in the simulated jungle. For a moment there was silence, broken only by the ominous rustling of holographic leaves and the occasional distant roar that sounded suspiciously like lunchtime. Then chaos erupted. Like it, Blarp, in a moment of panic-induced brilliance, attempted to camouflage himself as a rock. The effect was somewhat ruined by his constant whimpering and the fact that he was a vibrant shade of purple. Slop, with his feather-light physiology, was immediately caught in a gust of wind and sent tumbling through the air. Help, he squeaked as he pinwheeled past his classmates. I'm not ready to be part of the food chain. Grexthor, meanwhile, was desperately trying to find any source of moisture. Water, he gasped, his gills flapping uselessly. Need water. In the midst of this pandemonium, Alex stood calmly, assessing the situation with the air of someone who found the whole thing mildly inconvenient rather than life-threatening. All right, team, Alex announced, clapping their hands together. Let's try not to become the galaxy's most pathetic buffet, shall we? Xyla, grab onto that vine hanging next to you. Grexthor, there's a large leaf over there collecting dew, head for that. Blorp, maybe try being a less conspicuous rock. As the class fumbled to follow Alex's instructions, a low growl emanated from the underbrush. Two glowing eyes peered out, followed by a maw filled with teeth that would make a shark feel inadequate. Ah, Alex said, a hint of excitement creeping into their voice. Looks like the welcoming committee has arrived. Everyone behind me now. Now. The creature emerged from the foliage, a nightmarish amalgamation of fur, scales, and far too many legs. It fixed its gaze on the group, drool dripping from its impressive fangs. Oh, merciful cosmos, Blorp whimpered, his attempt at rock impersonation now more closely resembling a quivering jelly. We're doomed. Alex, however, seemed almost eager. They locked eyes with the beast, a slow grin spreading across their face. All right, you overgrown dust bunny, let's dance. What followed was a display that would be seared into the minds of the alien students for years to come. Alex moved with a speed and grace that seemed impossible for a being from a high-gravity world, dodging the creature's attacks with almost insulting ease. Come on, is that the best you've got? Alex taunted, narrowly avoiding a swipe from the beast's claws. My grandma moves faster than that, and she's got a hip replacement. The creature, clearly not used to prey that talked back, let alone insulted its hunting skills, hesitated. This moment of confusion was all Alex needed. With a move that could only be described as suicidally brave or just plain suicidal, Alex leapt onto the creature's back. Yeah, they shouted, gripping onto the beast's fur. Always wanted to try space rodeo. The creature, understandably miffed about this turn of events, began to buck and roar, trying to dislodge its unwelcome rider. Quick, Alex shouted to the stunned class. While it's distracted, find shelter. Look for high ground or a defensible position. Snapped out of their shock, the alien students scrambled to obey. Zelop used newfound vine-swinging skills to help Grexthor to a large cup leaf full of water. Blorp, in a moment of gelatinous glory, oozed up a tree with surprising speed. Meanwhile, Alex was having the time of their life. Woo! This is better than the mechanical bull at Uncle Dave's Questionable Choices saloon. The creature, tired of this indignity, finally managed to shake Alex off. They landed with a roll, popping up with a grin that was equal parts adrenaline and insanity. Thanks for the ride, buddy. Maybe buy me dinner first next time, yeah. The beast, thoroughly confused and possibly questioning its life choices, decided that this prey was simply not worth the trouble. With a final, half-hearted growl, it slunk back into the underbrush. As the sound of the creature's retreat faded, a slow clap echoed through the simulated jungle. Professor Zixnax materialized, his gelatinous form rippling with what might have been impressed surprise. Well, he gurgled, eye stalks swiveling to take in the scene. It seems I may have underestimated you, class, particularly you, Alex. I must say your species' approach to survival is uniquely effective. Alex brushed some dirt off their clothes, looking entirely too pleased with themselves. What can I say, Prof? On Earth, we call this a typical Friday night. The other students began to emerge from their various hiding spots, a mix of awe and residual terror on their alien faces. That was incredible. Ixalop chirped, his delicate fronds quivering with excitement rather than fear for the first time since class began. Indeed, Grexthor gurgled from his leaf puddle. I've never seen anyone actually taunt a predator before. Is this a common human tactic? Alex shrugged. It's not in the official handbook or anything, but it tends to work. Most predators aren't used to prey that fights back, let alone insults their mother. Blorp, still clinging to his tree, managed to form a mouth-like opening. But weren't you scared? At this, Alex's bravado faltered slightly. Scared, buddy, I was terrified. But here's the thing about being from a death world, you learn pretty quick that fear is just nature's way of saying, hey, pay attention. It's not about not being scared, it's about not letting the fear stop you. Zexnax's form rippled in what might have been approval. A valuable lesson indeed. Perhaps there's more to learn from our death worlder friend than I anticipated. Class, I believe we've found our new teaching assistant. Alex's eyes widened. Wait, what? But before they could protest, the rest of the class had swarmed around them, peppering them with questions. Can you teach us how to do that rolling thing? Is it true humans can regenerate lost limbs? Do all humans laugh in the face of death? Or is that just you? As Alex tried to field the barrage of queries, Zixnax's voice cut through the chatter. Well then, class, I believe this concludes today's lesson. Your homework is to contemplate your own mortality, and perhaps invest in some running shoes. Class dismissed. The holographic jungle flickered and faded, leaving behind a group of shell-shocked but oddly invigorated alien students, and one slightly overwhelmed human. As the class filed out, chattering excitedly about their brush with simulated death, Zixnax oozed over to Alex. You know, he gurgled, a hint of amusement in his voice. When I agreed to have a human in my class, I expected it to be educational. I just didn't expect the human to be the one doing the teaching. Alex grinned, running a hand through their sweat-dampened hair. Well, Prof, on Earth we have a saying, life's the best teacher, but it sends some steep invoices. Zixnax's eye stalks quivered in what might have been a laugh. Indeed. Well then, Professor Alex, I look forward to seeing what other lessons you might have for us this semester. Do try not to traumatize the students too much, won't you? The paperwork for psychological counseling is such a bother. As Alex watched the professor ooze away, they couldn't help but shake their head in bewilderment. When they'd signed up for an intergalactic exchange program, this wasn't exactly what they'd had in mind. But then again, when had anything in their life gone according to plan? With a chuckle and a crack of their knuckles that made a passing alien student flinch, Alex headed out of the classroom. After all, they had a lot of preparing to do. If they were going to teach a bunch of aliens how to survive, they'd need to brush up on their Earth skills. Maybe they'd start with the basics, how to make fire find water, and most importantly, how to make sarcastic quips in the face of certain doom. After all, if there's one thing humans excel at, it's turning terror into comedy gold. As they walked down the hallway, Alex couldn't help but grin. This semester was going to be interesting, to say the least. And who knows? Maybe by the end of it, they'd have a whole class of honorary Deathworlders. Now, wouldn't that be a sight to see? And so, dear readers, we leave our intrepid human and their alien classmates to ponder the joys of survival, the thrill of near-death experiences, and the ever-important skill of laughing in the face of mortal peril. Will Alex successfully impart the wisdom of the Deathworlders? Will the alien students survive the semester with all their appendages? And so, dear readers, we leave our intrepid human and their alien classmates to ponder the joys of survival, the thrill of near-death experiences, and the ever-important skill of laughing in the face of mortal peril. Will Alex successfully impart the wisdom of the Deathworlders? Will the alien students survive the semester with all their appendages intact? Let's find out, shall we? The next few weeks at Galactic Federation University were interesting to say the least. Word spread quickly about the Deathworlder, who had not only survived Professor Zixnax's infamous Survival Skills 101 class, but had also managed to turn the tables on both the simulated predator and the professor himself. Suddenly, Alex found themselves the center of attention. Alien students from all corners of the galaxy were clamoring to join the class, eager to learn the secrets of Deathworld survival. The university administration, sensing a potential PR goldmine, and possibly fearing legal action if they didn't provide proper safety training, decided to expand the class and give Alex an ituixal position as a teaching assistant. And so on a particularly balmy Tuesday morning, or what passed for morning in the artificial day-night cycle of the space station, Alex found themselves standing before a packed auditorium. The room was a veritable Noah's Ark of alien life, each species more bizarre than the last. "All right, settle down, folks," Alex called out, their voice carrying over the din of chirps, squeaks, and what sounded suspiciously like mating calls. "Welcome to Deathworld Survival 101. How to not become a cosmic punchline. I'm your guide on this journey of self-preservation, Alex from Earth. You may know it as that terrifying ball of nope in your astronomy books." A nervous titter ran through the crowd. In the front row, Blorp, who had become something of a groupie since the last class, quivered with excitement, or fear. It was hard to tell with gelatinous life forms. "Now, before we begin, I want to make one thing clear," Alex continued, pacing back and forth with the confidence of someone who had stared death in the face and asked it for a dance. "Contrary to popular belief, humans are not invincible super beings." A collective gasp rose from the audience. One student, a floating gas cloud named Zephyr, actually condensed slightly in shock. "That's right, folks. We bleed, we break, and sometimes we make really, really stupid decisions. The difference is we've turned survival into an extreme sport. Now, who's ready to learn how to think like a Deathworld?" The enthusiasm in the room was palpable, if a bit terrified. "Excellent. Let's start with Lesson 1. Everything is trying to kill you, and that's okay." For the next hour, Alex regaled the class with tales of Earth's many, many ways to turn a pleasant day into a fight for survival. The students listened with a mix of horror and fascination as Alex described concepts like weather. The idea that the very sky could attack you was mind-boggling. Allergies, your own body betraying you. Preposterous in reality TV, surely this had to be a joke, right? "And that, my friends, is why you should always carry a towel," Alex concluded, wrapping up a particularly harrowing tale involving a picnic, a swarm of fire ants, and an unfortunately placed anthill. Slop, his delicate fronds now permanently curled from stress, raised a timid appendage. "But Alex," he stammered, "how do you humans manage to survive, let alone thrive in such conditions?" Alex grinned, a sight that still made some of the more timid students flinch. "Excellent question, Slop. That brings us to Lesson 2, Adaptation, Innovation, and a Healthy Dose of Insanity." With a flourish that would make a stage magician proud, Alex pulled out a small, innocuous-looking device from their pocket. The class leaned forward in anticipation, no doubt expecting some advanced piece of survival tech. "This, my dear students, is a paperclip," Alex announced, holding up the bent piece of metal triumphantly. "On Earth, this simple object has been used to fix machines, pick locks, create rudimentary weapons, and in one particularly memorable instance, negotiate interplanetary peace. Never underestimate the power of human ingenuity or inspiration." The class broke out in excited murmurs. If a mere paperclip could do all that, what other wonders did humans possess? "Now," Alex continued, their grin taking on a slightly manic edge, "who wants to learn how to MacGyver their way out of a black hole, using nothing but lint and sheer audacity?" The resulting cheer was so enthusiastic that 3 different atmospheric containment alarms went off. As the semester progressed, Alex's classes became the stuff of legend. Students whispered in hushed tones about the day Alex taught them to make fire using nothing but 2 rocks and colorful human expletives. They marveled at the lecture on improvisational weaponry, which ended with half the class eyeing their writing utensils with newfound respect and a hint of fear. But it wasn't all fun and near-death experiences. Alex made sure to hammer home the most important lessons of survival. Panic is a luxury you can't afford. Save it for after you've survived. Your brain is the most powerful survival tool you have. Use it or lose it, possibly literally. Teamwork makes the dream work, especially when the dream is not becoming alien chow. It was this last point that really struck a chord with the class. Species that had never interacted before found themselves working together, combining their unique abilities to overcome challenges. Blorp's gelatinous form proved excellent for squeezing through tight spaces, while Slop's light physiology made him an ideal lookout. Even Grexthor, once he got over his constant need for moisture, turned out to be a natural at constructing shelters. Of course, not everyone was thrilled with Alex's teaching methods. The university's insurance department had to create an entirely new category of coverage called Deathworlder-induced incidents. The cafeteria staff went on strike after Alex's lesson on extreme foraging led to students attempting to eat everything that wasn't bolted down, and some things that were. But the results spoke for themselves. By mid-semester, Alex's students were showing a level of resilience and adaptability that shocked even the most seasoned professors. It all came to a head during the infamous final exam incident. Picture, if you will, a simulated environment that made the jungle from the first class look like a walk in the park. Acid rain fell from the sky, the ground periodically opened up to reveal lava pits, and the air itself seemed to have a vendetta against anything with lungs or exchange organs. Into this hellscape strode Alex, followed by a group of students who, just a few months ago, would have fainted at the mere description of such conditions. Now they faced it with grim determination, and only a few whimpers from Blorp. "All right, team," Alex announced, shouting to be heard over the howling wind. "This is it. Everything we've learned has led to this moment. Remember your training, watch each other's backs, and for the love of all that's holy, try not to get eaten by the carnivorous plants." "That's just embarrassing." What followed was a symphony of organized chaos. Zelob, using his ability to ride air currents, scouted ahead for danger. Grex Thor, having finally mastered the art of land movement, expertly constructed a series of shelters using debris and what appeared to be his own bodily secretions. Alex made a mental note to commend him on his resourcefulness from a safe distance. Blorp, in a moment of gelatinous glory, managed to absorb and neutralize a splash of acid rain that nearly hit the group. The resulting chemical reaction turned him a lovely shade of fuchsia, but he wore his new color with pride. Even Zephyr, the gaseous student who had once been too afraid to condense, now expertly manipulated air currents to divert toxic fumes away from the group. As for Alex, they were in their element, a whirlwind of action and increasingly creative profanity. One moment they were fashioning a bridge across a lava pit, using nothing but space debris and sheer audacity. The next they were engaged in a staring contest with a carnivorous plant, which against all odds, the plant lost. From his observation deck, safely ensconced behind several layers of shielding, Professor Zixnax watched in a mix of awe and mild terror. "By the cosmic egg," he muttered, his gelatinous form quivering with excitement, "I think we've created monsters." As the simulation reached its climax, with the very air seeming to ignite around them, Alex turned to their battered but unbowed team. "All right, folks, this is it. The final push. Remember what I taught you about the human concept of YOLO?" The alien students nodded, a glint of Deathworld madness in their eyes or equivalent sensory organs. "Well, forget that noise. Today we're going with the different human motto, hold my beer and watch this," with a war cry that would have made their ancestors proud and possibly concerned. Alex led the charge. What happened next defied description, logic, and several laws of physics. There were explosions, daring rescues, at least 3 instances of Blorp being used as an impromptu projectile weapon, and one moment where Celop, carried by Zephyr, performed what could only be described as an aerial ballet to disarm a plasma bomb. When the dust settled and the simulation faded away, the auditorium was left in stunned silence. Then, slowly, a cheer began to build. It started with Blorp, a high-pitched squeal of triumph, and soon spread to the entire class. Even Professor Zixnax, who had oozed down from his observation deck, was vibrating with what could only be described as gooey applause. Well, the professor gurgled, his eye stalk swiveling to take in the battered but victorious group. "It seems I owe you an apology, Alex. When I brought a Deathworlder into my class, I expected to teach survival. I never imagined that you'd end up with an army of honorary Deathworlders." Alex finished, grinning despite the impressive collection of bruises they'd acquired. "Yeah, funny how that works out." As the class celebrated their victory, trading stories and comparing battle scars, or in Blorp's case, interesting new color patterns, Alex couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. These beings, once so soft and unprepared, had faced the worst a simulated Deathworld could throw at them and come out stronger. "You know," Sklop chirped, his fronds waving with newfound confidence, "I used to think humans were terrifying. Now I realize you're still terrifying, but in a good way." Alex laughed, clapping Exelop on what they hoped was his shoulder. "That's the spirit. Now, who's up for celebrating in true Earth fashion? I hear the cafeteria is serving something called extra spicy curry today. Trust me, it'll put hair on your chest, metaphorically speaking, of course." As the group made their way out of the auditorium, already swapping ideas for how to improve the cafeteria food, Professor Zixnax watched them go with a mixture of pride and mild concern. "I suppose I should inform the board that we'll need to update our curriculum," he mused to himself. "Perhaps a new course. Advanced Deathworld Diplomacy. How not to panic when humans offer to show you a cool trick." And so, dear readers, we leave our intrepid heroes to their well-earned celebration. The galaxy may not be ready for this new breed of honorary Deathworlders, but one thing's for certain, it'll never be the same again. After all, in the grand cosmic classroom of life, sometimes the best lessons come from those crazy enough to treat survival like an extreme sport. And if there's one thing humans excel at, it's turning adversity into an adrenaline-fueled adventure. Class dismissed until the next cosmic crisis. That is, Finn. Another my done.